Hello once again and welcome to this episode of Happy Birthday Wellness Quiz, day 129, your health promotion and disease prevention podcast brought to you by Kike Afia. My name is Sibiri Obogo. I'm a medical doctor and specialist in public health medicine. So today I'm going to discuss how much meat is safe to consume daily. Now, this topic is important because we know from studies that as countries become richer and wealthy, or as individuals have more disposable income, they tend to shift from plant sources to animal sources of protein. And this has public health consequences, in particular in terms of cardiovascular disease, as well as development of several cancers. Now, if this is your birthday, I wish you a happy one and many more candles to blow. So if your friend, sibling, spouse, or colleague is having a birthday, I want you to share these blessings with them. And remember that there's no better birthday gift than to be in good health. So you might do a good thing to share this podcast with your friends. So here's a quiz for which I will give the answer at the end. So when considering the amount of meat you eat in a week, it's important to note the difference between pre-cooked or raw meat and the cooked meat weights. Now, dietary guidelines recommend between 600 and 700 grams of raw lean red meat per week in order to meet iron, zinc, and vitamin B12 recommendation. So the question is, how much is that in grams cooked? A, 450 grams, B, 600 grams, C, 300 grams, D, 650 grams, and E, 750 grams. I will share the answer at the end. So I did discuss this about when we were discussing the issue of how much protein to consume. And basically the three ways of determining how much protein you need to consume. You can use what you call the acceptable macronutrient distribution range. You can also use age. So in today's episode, I'm going to discuss using age as well as the recommended dietary allowance. So basically, protein intake is high between, let's say, 6 months and up to 3 years. And then it starts coming down. So by the time you're an adult above 18 years, it's about 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight. So how we calculate is, if you're 70 kilograms, it's 0.8 times 70. That gives you how many grams you should consume per day. And remember, this is the minimum requirement. If, let's say, you're pregnant or you're lactating, or even people who engage in regular physical activity, the requirements are slightly higher. But then in terms of age, the average recommended dietary intake for protein from women is 46 grams and for men is 56 grams. But if you use this, then it varies based on your age. I said you can also use the acceptable macronutrient distribution range, whereby majority of your calories should come from carbohydrates, about 55%, and then protein should constitute 20%, and then fats 30%. So if I'm using this method for protein, so for example, I need to know my daily calorie intake. So if my calorie intake is 2,000 kilocalories per day, the minimum protein requirement is this times 10%. Then I get the calories. Now, after getting the calories, I divide by 4 because 1 gram of protein gives you 4 kilocalories. So that becomes your minimum, your minimum upper intake, your minimum intake. For maximum intake, I'll multiply 35% of 2,000 calories. That gives you my minimum intake in calories. Then divide that by 4. because as I said, 1 gram of protein gives 4 kilocalories. That gives you the grammage. So on the days when you are not exercising, you can take the lower limit 10. On the days you're exercising, you can take the upper limit of 35. So what does, let's say, if we say 60 grams of protein, what does it look like? So this gives you an example of servings and how much protein there is. Now we normally use a cup as a measure for a serving. 1 cup is about 240 milliliters. That's almost a quarter of a liter. So a cup of milk gives you about 8 grams of protein. A cup of yogurt gives you about 12 grams of protein. And 1 ounce of cheese is about 8 grams of protein. A poultry, like 3 ounces of chicken breast gives you 17 grams. Now 3 ounces is about a computer mouse or a deck of cards, that size of serving. A fish, 3 ounces gives you between 16 and 26 grams depending on the type of fish. And then meat, 3 ounces will give you about 20 grams. So 1 egg gives you about 6 grams of protein. So that's how we calculate. So for example, if I look at this portion here, this looks like 9 ounces of meat steak. So that will give you about 60 grams of protein. I said an egg is 6 grams. So these are 2 eggs. That's about 12 grams of protein. So that's how you calculate. So remember the minimum, maximum, and do not exceed your limit, because remember our bodies do not store proteins. So most of it is usually converted into fat. And if you consume more than 500 calories from whatever source beyond your daily limit per week, then you add about half a kilogram of body weight. So in other words, it can increase your weight gain. So there's a link between excess consumption of red meat and processed meat. Now in 2015, WHO declared processed meat as a class 1 carcinogen, meaning there's a strong evidence that processed meats cause cancer in humans. The evidence against eating too much red meat is strongest for bowel cancer, which is the world's second biggest killer in terms of cancer. So 1 in 6 new bowel cancer cases are linked to eating too much red meat. That's either beef, mutton, pork, or goat meat, or processed meat. Things like ham, bacon, salami, and sausages, hot dogs, pepperoni, corned beef, and cold cuts such as bologna and salami. The World Cancer Research advises to limit red meat to about 3 to 4 servings a week, and you should not exceed 700 grams of raw weight meat per week. That's about 455 grams cooked. Instead, you should choose fish, chicken, and legumes if you want to consume more protein than 455 grams of red meat. Remember, red meat is not necessarily bad because it's a good source of zinc, iron, as well as vitamin B12. Processed meats pose a greater risk of cancer of the colon than red meat and should be cut out of, if possible, just minimized completely. Remember, 50 grams of bacon will increase your risk of colorectal cancer by about 18%. So what is processed meat then? All meat that has been smoked, salted, cured, dried, or canned to extend its shelf life or change taste is considered as processed meat. So let's look at a study linking between protein intake and cardiovascular risk. This study was published in Journal of Circulation in 2010, and study was called the Nurses Health Study. It enrolled 84,000 women aged between 30 and 55 years who had no history of cancer, angina, myocardial infarction, or cardiovascular disease, and participants were followed up for 26 years. What they found was that red meat intake was associated with increased risk of coronary heart disease. Those who shifted sources of protein in diet decrease the risk from between 13 and 30% per daily serving. By shifting, we mean that instead of eating red meat, they ate more nuts, low-fat dairy, poultry, as well as fish. So this is quite significant in terms of cardiovascular health. So back to our quiz, the question was asking us if your requirement for eating red meat per week is 700 grams of raw meat, how much is that in terms of cooked meat? So basically what you do, raw meat reduces by 25% when cooked. So therefore you just basically multiply 75% or 75% of 700 grams, and that gives you about 450 to 525 grams. So the answer is A. So this is the range you get. So that's how you calculate. So weigh raw, then make sure it's 700 grams. When you cook it, it's going to be about reduced by 25%. So this podcast was brought to you by Kiki Afya. My name is Speedy Obogo. I'm a medical doctor and specialist in public health medicine. We rely on well-wishers to bring you this content, and you can support us by subscribing, sharing, or liking. For those who have been asking us other way support us, we have now an M-Pesa till number 766500. You can also use M-Pesa mobile number 0720 95 82 50. So see you tomorrow, same place, same time, where we shall be discussing another topic.